Welcome to Whatsoever, more or less. My name is Jason, and I have a quick thought for you today regarding Lachoneus and President Trump. Okay, now I am not saying one thing or another about whether or not Trump is some kind of savior of the Constitution or something like that, but rather we have been told to look at the Book of Mormon for lessons related to our time, not just once, but a lot. Okay, and so first off, I'm going to emphasize some points that President Oaks made, our current prophet, back when he was part of the first presidency, uh, in his talk defending our divinely inspired Constitution, okay, where he said that the Constitution has been under threat with the ebbs and flows of one branch impeding and exercising the powers that rightfully belong to another branch, right? With people swearing, saying they're loyal to it, like a loyalty test, even though they don't know it, don't care to actually pay attention to it, as the lofty status it has, as the separation of powers that it creates, where President Oaks emphasized the division of powers between states and the federal governments and then between the different branches, where President Oaks emphasized the Bill of Rights, where President Oaks emphasized the impeding of free speech as a threat to the Constitution. So, first off, look at all those threats. Go back and read Defending Our Divinely Inspired Constitution by our now prophet, back when he was part of the first presidency under President Nelson in 2021, right after the 2020 election. Okay? Now, in 2021, I believe, Time Magazine came out with an article called The Secret I can't remember. It's something about the secret tactics that were used to save the 2020 election. And what they admit to is all the different strategies that they used to go ahead and grab a win away from Donald Trump to President Biden. Everything from social media blocking speech, campaign ads, taking this way, taking that away, controlling the information available on the internet. And then again, what President Oaks called the ebbs and the flows. So we're talking about free speech, and then we're talking about the ebbs and the flows, or the impeding the taking of powers that rightfully belong to one branch and another branch exercising those. So say, for example, the executive branch or the judicial branch exercising emergency measures that aren't authorized in the Constitution or by previous legislative measures to change the times, manners, and places of elections. Okay, I'm not an expert on all the times it happened. I watched literally all of the hearings back in 2020. I felt like something told me at that point that I needed to become a more responsible citizen. I had taken a break from politics for a while. I had listened in the past to books on the 7 pivotal cases that changed the interpretation of the Constitution by Ted Stewart. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Some books called Supreme Power. I had listened to the Federalist Papers. I had listened to my fair share of Glenn Beck and Ezra Taft Benson and what have you, which I still listen to Glenn Beck. I've moved on mostly from him to looking at other stuff that I find even more relevant, at least for now, kind of like building up my foundation, right? But anyhow, something told me in 2020, fortunately, I'd already bought the book The Lord's Way by Dallin H. Oaks and the book An Enemy Hath Done This by Ezra Taft Benson. And then everything started kind of happening. And I'm like, I got those books for a reason, didn't I? So I guess I'm going to start looking at them. Okay. I started following all those hearings then, paying attention. I just felt this responsibility to. Okay. That's just me. Now I'm just sharing it. I am not somebody who's going to tell you, hey, this is your source of truth. That's your source of truth. I'm just letting you know where I went for my sources of truth in general. So I found the book on judicial supremacy quite annoying. I was like the whole time thinking, wait a second, you admitted at the beginning of the book that this isn't an actually constitutionally granted power. It's just one that we've accepted. And so it drove me crazy the whole time. And I would encourage you to study President Oaks more. He's very Jeffersonian, Madisonian. He takes lots of subtle jabs at the idea of judicial supremacy very, very effectively. And if you ask me, I'm not speaking for him. And anyhow, so This much I know. There was a lot of changes to the times, manners, and places of elections by people other than um, the legislative branch, which, if you look at Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution, it's either state legislature, and if the state legislature, there's something about it that they came up with that doesn't work, the federal legislature can modify it. That's it. Nothing in Article 3 grants the Supreme Court power over it. There's no power, whereas other parts of Article 1 specify, hey, the governors of the states can do this, the legislatures of the states can do this, right? There was nothing said about the state courts can modify it if they need to, or the state executives can modify it if they need to. It's not there. It's just not. So it's a power that strictly belongs to the legislative branch. So there's your ebbs and flows. Okay. President Trump was the legitimate president. He called out the swamp. He made people mad. He was an outsider. He was blocked more than any other president, if I'm not mistaken. They got all defensive against him, right? I keep saying your main secret combinations, by the way, are judicial supremacy, the administrative state, and treaties that exercise powers they're not supposed to, such as the World Health Organization, UN, all that kind of stuff. And that aren't what the traditional meaning of treaty was at the time the Constitution gained legal force, when it allowed for treaties. That would not have been understood. So you've got these organizations that resent President Trump. Corporate America benefits from him. That's just the American people upholding them, though. The actual secret combination that's part of the government, if you ask me. This is my take, because the Nephites upheld them. So it has to be noble in order to uphold it. Judicial supremacy, the administrative state, and treaties that exercise powers they're not supposed to exercise, instead of the other three branches operating the way they're supposed to, right? So President Trump, according to this Time Magazine article, according to the Constitution itself and several other challenges that were issued, and maybe there were secret ballots trucked in, I don't know. Maybe there was this. Maybe what Dinesh D'Souza said, the 1,000 mules, right, thing. Maybe that's true. But it's besides the point. You can find enough with what President Oaks identified. Branches exercising powers that rightfully belong to other branches. With the blocking of free speech. You can find enough evidence to be suspicious that things would have turned out differently had it not been for that. That's all I need to know. And so, it's reasonable to assume President Trump would have won without that. Without those threats to the Constitution identified by President Oaks. So, now, Lachoneus, he was the governor. He was the governor exercising power, going after the secret combinations. I think, read it for yourself, it's in 3 Nephi 3 and 4. Then he suddenly has to hole up, bring his people around him. Everybody has to start preparing, putting up all these preparedness and all these protections and what have you. And then as the Lamanites wear themselves out, or not the Lamanites, the secret combinations, Gadiant and robbers, what have you, wear themselves out, doing all their ridiculous stuff that's not reasonable. And they make a mockery. They make a mockery of the lambskin, as I understand it. They wear lambskin around their loins, right? Kind of like maybe somebody wearing a kente cloth or whatever, virtue signaling, as we'd call it, right? Trying to look all virtuous. Because the lamb is virtuous, right? Okay. Well, they wear themselves out, and finally the followers of Lachoneus are done with it. They're just done with it. And the Gadians are desperate. They're like, we're not getting enough food. We don't have this. We don't have that. Everything's falling apart. And they still insist on their ways. So the followers of Lachoneus chase them off. Boom. Get them gone. Gone forever. Who's more aggressively gone after those three parts of the secret combination than anybody? The idea of judicial supremacy, treaties that exercise powers they're not supposed to, right? International relationships that are going beyond what they're supposed to be. And then the administrative state, the agencies exercising powers in an incredibly unconstitutional way, clearly identified by President Benson as being such. President Benson confronted all three of these things, by the way, and President Oaks is actually quite effective at You really got to study him, you guys. If you don't read his talks like 20 times through, unless you're on his intellectual level, you probably won't get it, which I'm not on his intellectual level. I'm like, wait, why is he saying this here, but not then this here, but then this here, but then this? Wait, what's going on here? What's you read it, you read it, you read it. Oh, he's on the same page as President Benson, pretty much, right? Maybe slightly different. The way Madison and Jefferson were slightly different, but it's besides the point, you guys. They've all always been servants of the same Savior. So, and what he says about whatsoever more or less comes of evil regarding the Constitution. That's our doctrine. That's just our doctrine. It is what it is. So read that talk. I think President Trump at this point, he's when he went to Venezuela, he says, I didn't tell Congress about it because Congress leaks. I think he's probably right. Kind of reminds you of Lachoneus. That kind of hurts. Now, I've got one quote for you here. I've been reading this several times. I want to read it one more time. There's several others I have like this. But after I saw the Christmas stars in 2020 or 2021, whatever it was, I was like, why don't I reread 3rd Nephi and see if I can remember what else was associated with that, just for fun. And that's where I discovered the Lachoneus story. Later on, I met Morgan Philpott and said, man, I've been reading 3rd Nephi a lot the same way you do. Just once. I was in a hurry. I just saw him and had the chance to say hi real quick. That was it. And 3rd Nephi 7 is something we should at least be humble enough to consider a possibility. Never be so belligerent that you think it's not going to come up. Now, I say if the rulers, this is from Wilford Woodruff, he says, now if our rulers and governors become corrupt and attempts to trample those principles under their feet, though the nation itself might go to pieces, like in 3rd Nephi 7, yet it is beyond the power of man to destroy the principles of the Constitution. You have to study the principles of the Constitution. Study the Constitution itself and you'll understand the principles better, though. Study the Constitution itself and then pay attention for those principles. They may destroy one another, yet the principles contained in that instrument will live, and the God of heaven will maintain them until Jesus comes in the clouds of heaven to set up his throne in Jerusalem and to reign on earth 1,000 years. So a new system of government will be our new system of government when the Savior comes again, right? But until then, one way or another, we're going to keep living the Constitution until that day. All right, and that's just like in 3rd Nephi 1. There was someone, they saw the sign of the first coming, they're like, okay, cool, we don't have to live the law of Moses anymore. And others had to remind them, no. So, of course, right now we got the first presidency reinforcing the idea we're still living the Constitution, you guys. We're still living it up until the last moment. It may broke apart. There may be, we got to be humble enough to defend against that. We've been given a clear enough duty so many times it's not even funny. So Lachoneus, it's an interesting story. I would at least look at it the way President Benson did, as something to teach us a lesson, as Elder Bednar did. And look at that Time Magazine article about President Trump and the election in 2020. Look at all the measures that were taken, all the security measures by his supporters. And he won in a landslide in 2024. A landslide. That's all there is to it. And it's because they blocked a huge percentage of those threats. And so is Trump my hero? Maybe, I don't know. I still say we have a responsibility to defend the Constitution no matter who our president is. If it was George Washington, people in his cabinet still stood up to him. Jefferson, Madison, what have you. But at least there's something there to pay attention to. So that was my thought. Thanks for listening, you guys.